to the GOAT Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Neander. All right, what's going on today? This is going to be part one of our Week 8 in review. Really crazy week. We had a lot of big scores again this week. I mean, if you're going up against some of these teams, they're putting up 150, 170, 200 points, depending on your format. It's getting crazy out there. I mean, the amount of 35, 40-point games has just been pretty nuts this year. I really want to take a look at those stats a little bit further and see just how historic, if historic at all, the amount of, huge games there are. I mean, I don't remember there being this many 35-plus point games, pretty much every week. If you went up against Aaron Jones or Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp, you were, really struggling to overcome that. I mean, just a lot of big numbers being put up all across the league this week. And hopefully you're on the right side of that. There were a lot of big waiver wire guys and must start running backs that didn't come through. I'm looking at you, Ty Johnson. So let's start getting over it. Let's see what happened here. Hopefully you didn't take a bad beat. 7 weeks in here, 8 weeks in. Hey, you're hoping you're close to 500, if not a lot better, obviously. But for those teams that are 2-6. You got to keep playing 2-6. 6 and 7 gets you into playoffs some years, depending on your league. It really just depends on what happens. So you can always go on a run. You're not out of it at 2-6. So you got to keep playing your team. And let me just be honest here, just for the integrity of your league and for fantasy football. I know it sounds silly, but play your team. Make sure you have guys that are up that aren't on a bye week. Make sure you put your injured players down. You take them out if they're out for the year. Just manage your team the way you'd want somebody else to. It stinks when you're trying to get that last playoff spot, and then the guy you're trying to beat, he's playing somebody that isn't taking care of their lineup, and they're going to get an easy W, and just makes it that much harder for you. So, yeah, that's a big pet peeve of mine in fantasy football. I want you to play your team, try to get your win, even if your team sucks. Just put out the best version of it that you can. And try to get the most points that you can. That's really all you can do. So, but I digress. All right. Where are we going? Let's go to the Thursday night game. So that was in Minnesota. The Washington Redskins took on the Minnesota Vikings. You got what you needed from a few of the guys. If you were playing them, hopefully you didn't have too many Redskins in your lineup. So, Case Keenum got knocked out just before the half, or just didn't come back out for the half, and Dwayne Haskins. Unfortunately, pretty much all of the fantasy weapons, ceased to exist once Dwayne Haskins got in the game. Maybe you played Case Keenum and you streamed him. That didn't work out. If you played Adrian Peterson, you got just enough that you were okay with it. I mean, 76 yards on the ground, decent average, five and a half a clip pretty much. So you can't argue with that. But if you played any of the receiving options for Washington, you were definitely not happy. Scary Terry McLaurin had a decent first half with Keenum. He had 4 catches for 39 yards and was on his way to a very serviceable kind of a day. Maybe he gets in the end zone and has a decent game. But as it turned out, Haskins came in, and that was kind of all she wrote for McLaurin's day. I've got him on a couple of benches, and I just got to see what's happening here. I mean, at this point, I'm not playing Terry McLaurin without Case Keenum. For me, that's the only way it works. That's all I'm doing. You played anybody else on Washington, which I can't imagine you did, you wouldn't have been happy. Moving over to Minnesota, Kirk Cousins had another really solid and efficient game, 23 of 26, 285 yards. He did not get the ball in the end zone, though. And at the end of the day, that was the story for his fantasy days, that the ball didn't get into the end zone through the air. So he had a good game for the Vikings, but probably not for your fantasy team if you played him. Dalvin Cook continues to be a beast. Cook's year has just been amazing so far. He's on track to have just a really fantastic fantasy season. So 23 carries, 98 yards, just missed out on that 100 yards again, but 4.3 yards a carry. He got the touchdown on the ground. So, the touchdown with the 5 receptions, 73 yards. That's kind of the big story here, has been his receiving work. He's probably, maybe second or third in the league, only to Christian McCaffrey and then Aaron Jones, who's had some crazy games receiving. Other than that, though, I think Dalvin Cook is probably the third most valuable running back out of the backfield receiving the ball for his team and for your team. So you were happy there. I do want to bring up Alexander Madison just because if you are a Dalvin Cook owner, this is the time of year where you have to start thinking about those handcuffs. A lot of the bye weeks are gone. You kind of know who you're playing already. And if Alexander Madison is out on your waiver wire and you're a Dalvin Cook owner, this is the time to make sure you have that handcuff taken care of. If Dalvin Cook goes down right now, not only does that crush you, but that can turn Alexander Madison into a league winner for somebody else that doesn't even need that good of a piece. He's looked fantastic. 13 carries, 61 yards, 4.7 a clip. He caught a couple balls out of the backfield, and make no mistake, if Dalvin Cook goes out for any amount of time, I think Alexander Madison is essentially an RB1, right out of the gate. So just keep an eye on Madison. He looks good. He's not going to take a lot of work from Dalvin Cook. The point is that he's doing a good amount with what he's getting. He's not getting that much every week. He's touching the ball 10 to 15 times, but he's really, really doing a lot with it. So just keep an eye on Alexander Madison. Yeah, if you played Stephon Diggs, you were happy. Another big game. Caught all 7 of his targets. That's a big thing. 7 for 7, 143. Didn't get the touchdown, which would have made this, a great game. But it was a very good game, and you're just happy to see Stephon Diggs trending upward after, those first few weeks after coming out, kind of being upset. Then you heard maybe some, trade rumors, but now it seems like Diggs is happy. Cousins is throwing the ball well. All is good in Minnesota now, right? I mean, nobody should be worried about anything. They're 6-2. They're 4-0 at home. I mean, they're rolling. So I think everybody on that team is happy. If you streamed Olabisi Johnson, didn't happen. Only saw 2 targets. Caught them both for 27, but that didn't work. Tight ends continue to be unplayable in Minnesota. Irv Smith, looks good for their future as far as having him as a tight end. 3 for 3, 21 yards. Rudolph was also 3 for 3, only 17 yards. So nothing going there if you played them. It was kind of an ugly game. Teams weren't getting in the end zone. The second half, once Haskins came in, the whole game just seemed to slow down to a crawl, and that was that. All right, let's go to Atlanta, my hometown, not my original hometown, but this is an Atlanta-based show, so we're going to call the Falcons the hometown team. That'll be the easiest way to go through it. And the Seattle Seahawks came into Atlanta, got the win, 27-20. It wasn't that close. Atlanta scored, late in the game and made it look a little bit closer, but the Seahawks didn't look great. They looked good, but you got what you needed from most of your pieces. And the Falcons, considering the fact that Matt Ryan was out, that you had Matt Shaw, of course you were probably a little bit stressed out about playing your Falcons, hoping that it wasn't going to be a bust of a game. But the truth is you had to be pretty happy with your Falcons players. It really wasn't bad for most of them. Russell Wilson on the road had the exact Russell Wilson type game that you're going to get out of him a lot of times in the year, which is extraordinarily efficient and very good, but just lacking volume. He was 14 of 20. He threw the ball 20 times. 182 yards, 2 touchdowns, pretty much exactly what you're expecting out of the game plan that Seattle wants to execute. They want to run the ball. They want to play defense. They ran the ball 29 times on the ground, not including Russell Wilson and his scrambles, but running back carries. 29 running back carries on the day compared to 20 passing attempts, and that's really what they want to do. So if you played Russell Wilson, you got just enough that you were happy. You got a couple of touchdowns, so you were fine. But this is how it goes when you have a Seattle offense. Chris Carson was good, 20 carries, 90 yards, so 4.5 a clip, got the touchdown. That really kind of helped his day out. He was not involved in the passing game. He only had 1 target, didn't catch it. That continues to be a point of concern for me. Yeah, I want to see him getting the ball a little bit more, out of the backfield. 3 or 4 carries for me, that holds value. That's what I would want to see. So, we'll see if that happens. You're still happy you're playing Chris Carson. He's still a big part of your team. Rashad Penny, again, I want to bring him up just because he looked a lot better. He looked great, this week. He was running the ball really hard. Only 8 carries, 55 yards. So I don't bring it up as in Chris Carson's losing his target share as far as his share of the carries. But just keep an eye. Rashad Penny is, a guy that might wind up having fringe flex appeal, near the end of the year. He's starting to look better. He's going to get the ball a little bit more. And, it might be kind of team where you can play, more than one running back. Tyler Lockett, another good game, caught all 6 of his targets, which, hey, again, it's not a lot of targets, 6 targets, but only 20 attempts. So, the target share was excellent for Tyler Lockett. He caught all 6 of them, 100 yards. You can't complain about the 16 yards. It just makes you feel like, God, if they threw the ball 35 times or 40 times like some of these teams, what kind of numbers would this team put up? I don't know. I don't think we're going to find out very many times this year. There were no other receiving options that had high volume. But DK Metcalf, if you played him, you were thrilled. He got the 2 touchdowns. He only had 3 receptions, 5 targets, 13 yards. But 3 receptions, 13 yards. He got the 2 touchdowns, and he was wide open. If I remember correctly, he could have had a 3rd touchdown. But you're happy with the way they're looking for Metcalf in the red zone. If you're in a standard league, a non-PPR league, I think he has much more value just because of the kind of red zone target that he is. But if you're playing him in a PPR league, it's pretty much touchdown or bust because he's not getting the volume that you need. On the Atlanta side of things, Matt Shaw went crazy. He threw the ball 52 times. In contrast, right? Almost 3 times, 2.5 times the amount that Russell Wilson threw the ball. 460 yards through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. If you lost Matt Ryan and you played Matt Shaw, you were, fine with that, right? A ton of yards, a ton of volume, so that's fine. Devontae Freeman, continued to struggle on the ground. Luckily, the receiving work made up for it. He was 13 for 39 on the ground, but 8 of 8 in the air, 63 yards. That extra 14 points is what made the game, right? He scored about 18, and 14 of it was through the air. So he got what you needed him to get for this week, but you're still stressed out about playing Devontae Freeman. He's not playing well. The offensive line isn't playing well, and the team's not playing well. Luckily, they're still putting up points for fantasy. I don't like playing my assets on a team that seems to be trending down pretty hard. Julio Jones, big game. 10 receptions on 12 targets, 152 yards. You continue to get what you need out of Julio Jones. Calvin Ridley did see a nice target share now that Mohamed Sanu is gone. He didn't convert that many of them. 4 receptions on 7 targets, 70 yards. You want to see a lot more out of Ridley. I thought he was hurt. He came down on his arm and his shoulder pretty hard there. I thought it looked bad, but he was back in shortly after. Good news for the Calvin Ridley owners. And you just want to see more out of him. You want to see the touchdowns, and you really want to see a true number 2 receiver in what should be a high-powered offense, and it's not happening. I think you're still playing Calvin Ridley, but your expectation needs to move away from wide receiver 2 and needs to be firmly in the flex and fringe wide receiver 3 category. Big news here, actually, because he had a decent game, and you got to look at it going forward, was who's going to get the new targets? Is it just going to be split amongst the people that are already there, or will somebody else get them? And the answer is Russell Gage is going to get these targets. 9 targets, 7 receptions, 58 yards. It's hard to see that coming, and I thought it might be Justin Hardy getting a lot of the looks, and it still might be that way. So I got my eyes on Russell Gage. If you have a waiver wire pick to burn, if you're not sweating it this week, and you have somebody you can drop that's going to be out for the next few weeks, somebody you picked up that didn't do anything, maybe a Ty Johnson or a Chase Edmonds. You'll hear both of their names over this review show. Maybe you drop one of those guys and get a Russell Gage to see if he has value. But anybody that gets 9 targets in a decent offense, I'm happy with. But we'll have to see what happens when Matt Ryan comes back. Austin Hooper continues to kill it. 6 receptions on 7 targets, 65 yards, and a touchdown. Austin Hooper is matchup proof. He's quarterback proof. He is absolutely, just tight end proof. Man, I thought it was a possibility he could wind up near that, first half of tight end ones, maybe, if he had a really good season. But he's just killing it. You are thrilled as an Austin Hooper owner, and you're going to keep playing him. Yeah, so easy enough. Let's move on. Let's move on to Buffalo, my Bills. Didn't look very good, but I had a feeling this was a little bit of a trap game. A lot of people saw this coming. Philadelphia hasn't been playing up to their talent level, and Buffalo maybe's been playing a little bit over their head. Their defense has been locked down, and hard to keep that going throughout the year. But the Philadelphia Eagles came into Buffalo and handled them pretty easily, 31-13. They didn't look great by any means, but they definitely controlled the line of scrimmage. They were able to run the ball effectively on Buffalo and make a couple of big plays. So if you started Carson Wentz, which a lot of people were telling me not to, and that was the right move with Buffalo's secondary. They do have a great secondary. So he had a quiet day, 172 through the air and a touchdown. You got just enough that it didn't really hurt you that bad, but definitely not what you're looking for out of your starting quarterback. And I'll be interested to see what happens with Carson Wentz. He needs Deshaun Jackson back. He's got to get D-Jax back in the fold there. And it might happen this week. It might happen, after that. But I really do think when Deshaun Jackson gets back on the field, you're going to see all of the Philadelphia assets, honestly, take a little bit of a bump. I just think it's going to be a better offense. More possessions, more first downs. I think that team is going to be better with Deshaun Jackson. Running backs, every running back you've heard of and the ones you haven't scored for Philly. Jordan Howard, 23 carries, 96 yards and a touchdown. Continues to look pretty solid. I got to tell you, Jordan Howard running the ball hard. 4.2 yards a carry. Not great, but certainly not bad. Caught one ball for 15 yards, so not much help there, but you'll take the 2.5 extra points. But Jordan Howard continues to be playable as an RB2, as a flex guy. 23 carries in a game where it was like 30-mile-an-hour gusts of wind. So that makes sense. He might not always get 20-plus carries. But if you're telling me he's getting 15-plus carries, I want to play him. Now, the issue is Miles Sanders continues to make big plays. He only carried the ball 3 times, but 74 yards and a touchdown. Had that one monster run. Same thing through the air. He had 3 targets, caught all 3 for 44 yards. So all told, he touched the ball 6 times for 118 yards and a touchdown. You can't ignore that. You have to look at that production. If I'm Philadelphia, I'm feeling great that Jordan Howard's running hard and that he's consistent. But when I see a guy with the playmaking ability of Miles Sanders, I am compelled to get him the ball more. Now, Jordan Howard did have one of his touchdowns vultured. Boston Scott scored a touchdown on one of his 5 carries. 5 carries for 6 yards. So not a productive day, not somebody that you need to know, except that he stole a Jordan Howard touchdown, which stunk for Jordan Howard. Again, I mentioned the wind. It was crazy windy in Buffalo, so the passing games, struggled. Alshon Jeffrey, he got enough that you were okay with it. 6 targets, 4 catches, 64 yards, nothing big there. The other issue is that none of the other receiving options for Philadelphia seem to be making an impact right now. Aguilar was, just non-existent again. Zach Ertz owners have got to be not only concerned, but just kind of pissed, honestly. Dallas Goedert had a better game again. Zach Ertz only targeted 4 times, 2 receptions, 20 yards, compared to 5 targets for Dallas Goedert. He caught 3 of them, 22 yards, but he got the touchdown. So yeah, it's not that Goedert had a great game or anything, but he got the touchdown. He got more targets than Zach Ertz, and Zach Ertz owners were used to getting 7, 8+ targets a game, and it's just not happening. And where you paid for him, I try to tell y'all, 3rd round for Kittle and Ertz is not gonna return that value, but nobody listened to me. So either way, he got drafted in the 3rd round, and everybody that drafted him there is now hurting because you could have had Aaron Jones probably. How does that feel? Yep, not good. All right, Buffalo, Josh Allen. If you played Josh Allen, thankfully you got the touchdowns. That's what you needed. You also got the rushing yards. That's what you need when you play Josh Allen. Only $169 now, 16 for 34. Again, there was the wind, but you want to see better accuracy. That's a little concerning. 169 yards, but the 2 touchdowns, so you were happy with that. He also added 8 carries for 45 yards. And I think, when you look at his schedule coming up, I think he plays like Washington and Miami. He's got a few games on here that look like he's going to be a quarterback 1 moving forward. Not a high-end quarterback 1, but I'd put him down there in that low end of quarterback 1. They didn't run the ball that many times, which was kind of surprising, considering the weather. Frank Gore 9 for 34. Devin Singletary 3 for 19. Singletary did continue to flash that big playability though. 4 receptions, 30 yards. One of those was a 28-yard touchdown, and he looked really great on it. I just want to see him getting the ball more. I like Frank Gore, but again, just like I said with Miles Sanders, you have a young guy that's a proven playmaker. I want to get the ball in his hands. If you played John Brown, you got what you needed. 5 receptions for 54 yards, so over 10 points. He didn't hurt you, but you weren't, thrilled. You wanted that one big play, and you never got it. Cole Beasley, if you played him, the touchdown, he caught one of those touchdowns. You got what you needed. 3 receptions, 41 yards, and a touchdown. So Beasley continues to be a fringe flex appeal kind of option guy with a lot of bye weeks coming up. I think you can play him. Again, look at the matchups. I think you can play Beasley as long as you have the right expectations for him and know that, that 10 to 12 points is more than likely where you're going to be, looking. I do want to bring up Tyler Croft, tight end, because they did pay, a little money for him in the offseason. He's been hurt. He came back. He had 4 targets, caught 2 of them for 32 yards. If you're tight end desperate, like really desperate, you can look at Tyler Croft now. I do think he's going to get a little bit more involved. Not somebody I'm worried about going out and getting, but just depending on your situation, depending on who you're trotting out there every week, you can take a look at him. All right, let's keep it going. Let's move up to Chicago, Chi-Town. The Bears hosted the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Bears, man, they looked bad and still had a chance to win it, and they're just, I know their fans are pissed. They want a kicker. Yeah, it was ugly, man. It was ugly. They drove down the field right there at the end, even though Trubisky looked horrible all day. He got him into scoring position. Close. It wasn't like a 55-yarder. I mean, it was a very makeable field goal, and they didn't make it and they lost. But who were you playing here? All right, so you played Phillip Rivers. You got a Phillip Rivers type day, 200 yards, 1 touchdown and a pick. Usually you expect 2 touchdowns out of Phillip Rivers. He didn't get them this week, and, that kind of hurts you. Melvin Gordon fell into the end zone. He only had 8 carries for 31 yards. He did get the touchdown, though, so the touchdown saved your day if you continue to play Melvin Gordon. He had 2 receptions, 3 yards, so nothing there, right? 2.3 points. He was looking at a 5-point day without the touchdown. He still got you 11 or 12 points. Still not happy with it if you're playing him. And if you're the Chargers, you made, you made a mistake in starting to plug him in, but you made the right call in not paying him, right? So I guess if you're a Chargers fan or you're a member of the Chargers, ownership, you feel good about not paying out that money, but you don't feel good about the way he's playing. Austin Eckler was giving you a better chance to win, and now he's less involved, and now your team is 3-5. So you won this game. You should be 2-6, but you're 3-5. Austin Eckler continues to not get the ball now that Melvin Gordon is back in the rushing game. 3 carries, 3 yards, nothing going there. He did, however, have the 1 touchdown reception, saved his game. He only had 2 catches, 19 yards. You're getting used to 6-7 catches and a lot more yards. So that touchdown, thank goodness. If you played Austin Eckler, that touchdown saved you. You wound up scoring, 10 points for the week instead of 3. And you felt a lot better about it. Keenan Allen, who was supposedly going to be limited, had 10 targets, the team lead obviously, 7 receptions, 53 yards. You got what you needed out of Allen. It wasn't a huge game, but you were fine. A lot of people thought Mike Williams might have a really big game. He did not. Again, it was just enough points where you were okay if you played him. 3 receptions on 6 targets, 69 yards. He had 1 beautiful catch, though. He went up in between 2. All right, I don't want to say in between 2 defenders. He went above 2 defenders to bring a ball in, and it looked great. And he's that kind of athlete. He's going to get above everybody else. They need to look for him in the red zone. That's why he scored all those touchdowns last year. But, I'm glad I didn't play Mike Williams. You got, 9.9 points, but there are a lot more points out there to be had. Hunter Henry continues to be, solid. He's solid. He's got 6 targets again this week, 4 receptions, 47 yards. And in today's tight end world, 8.7 points makes you pretty happy. All right, the Bears, Mitchell Trubisky, another tough game for Mitch, 253, no touchdowns and a pick. No one's really playing him, so we don't have to talk about him. Continue to not play him, and I'll continue to not talk about him. That's fine. David Montgomery, big game. This is his welcoming out party. Well, that's a little dangerous to say. I don't want to say that. He's not coming out, but this is David Montgomery's big bust-out game, his first huge game, 27 carries, 135 yards, and a touchdown. On the ground, he added 4 receptions for 12 yards. Big old game for David Montgomery. And this is what you're waiting for. You drafted him in the 3rd, maybe the 4th round. And you're hoping for this game. Hopefully this is where he turns the corner. This is where Matt Nagy turns the corner and says, I need to get him the ball. I love Tariq Cohen as a pass catcher. But running the ball, you got David Montgomery. You brought him in to be a 3-down back. Let's see it. Let's make it happen. I think this is the beginning of that trend. Tariq Cohen added 4 carries for 9 yards, but he did catch 3 passes for 37 yards. So just enough that he didn't kill you, but you certainly weren't happy about getting 7 points. That doesn't do anything for you. Let's see who's big here. Allen Robinson, another decent game. Again, nothing big. 5 receptions on 7 targets, 62 yards. This was kind of a trend this week where a lot of these big names had just okay games. They didn't hurt you, but they didn't, they certainly didn't win your week for you. They didn't put up what they've been putting up, but there weren't a lot of donuts and just, completely lost games. But Allen Robinson continues to be a wide receiver 1, even if he wasn't this week. He is a wide receiver 1 with his target share. Anthony Miller, hey, welcome back. 3 receptions, only 3 targets, but he made the most out of them. 67 yards. He looked pretty fast running across there. Taylor Gabriel, 4 receptions, 53 yards. We've played this game with the Bears before. The receivers flash. You can't play them. I repeat, are you listening? You can't play Bears receivers that are not named Allen Robinson, so don't do it. Same goes for tight ends. Don't play Trey Burton. 1 catch on 4 targets, 16 yards. That was a big bust of a free agent pickup for them last year. Continues to not make any kind of impact on that team. So, like I said, even at the end there, Trubisky was able to get it together enough to bring the team down into scoring position, get close, and Eddie Pinheiro missed the field goal. I didn't see if he got dropped yet from the team. I didn't see if he got cut, but I'm sure they're out there looking, and the Bears just tired of losing games because of missed field goals, and I totally understand where they're coming from. That's just brutal, man, to come back at home, have a chance to win it and to lose it. So, oh well, what are you gonna do? All right, let's go to Detroit. Here was a game. This game was big for fantasy owners in a number of different ways, in a good way and in a bad way. The New York Giants came to town and lost 31-26, but you got, pretty much what you needed out of both teams and most of your assets here. Let's start with Daniel Jones. First big game in a while. He had that first big game when he came in, and then he kind of came back down to earth, played a couple of tough teams, played New England in there, but had himself a game on the road, 322, 4 touchdowns, got a nice 4-pack, and no interceptions, taking care of the ball. You're glad to see that. So I don't think Daniel Jones was played in a lot of leagues, but if you played him in daily as a contrarian play, as a cheap quarterback, if you did play him as a streamer, you were thrilled. He looked great on the road. That's a good sign. And I still think, without Shepard, he's just getting, a little bit more weapons back every week. Right, Ingram was, under the weather or was out. Ingram is back. Barkley's back. Golden Tate's off suspension. You're about to get Shepard back, and you're just seeing, Daniel Jones and the Giants trending up as they're getting healthy on the offensive side. So you like to see that. Saquon, not a great day on the ground. The passing work, as it often does, was kind of the saving grace. But he ran the ball 19 times, 64 yards, very workmanlike. 8 receptions on 10 targets, 79 yards, and a touchdown. That's what you're looking for from Saquon Barkley. You're looking for, those almost those wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 numbers out of a running back every week. If you told me my wide receiver had 8 for 79 and a touchdown, I'd be happy every single week with that. You're getting that from your running back, plus you're getting the yards. Welcome back, Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley owners are extremely happy to have him back. Let's look at the receivers, though, outside of Saquon Barkley. Golden Tate, another really good game. I told people to play Tate this week. A lot of people didn't want to. 10 targets, 8 receptions, 85 yards. Yes, I do think when Sterling Shepard comes back that Tate will be targeted a little bit less, but I do think he has a lot of value. Did I say 6 receptions? 8 receptions, 85 yards, 8 out of 10. I thought I said that. But he had another really good game, heavily targeted, and I think you can play him in PPR formats as a solid wide receiver 2/flex kind of guy. So go ahead and play him. Evan Ingram, 7 targets, was third on the team in targets, 4 receptions, 40 yards. He did get in the end zone, so you're really happy to see that after being pretty much uninvolved. The story here as far as who scored the points was Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton had 2 receptions for 50 yards, but they were both touchdown grabs. So big game for Darius Slayton. I don't think you need to run out and get him because I do think that Sterling Shepard will be back this next week. But if for some reason Sterling Shepard's not playing, then yeah, you can take a dart throw at Darius Slayton and maybe play him. He's obviously on Daniel Jones's radar. He made a couple of nice grabs, and it's going to be a touchdown-dependent play. But if Sterling Shepard's out for some reason, I think you can play Darius Slayton if you have to. Let's put it that way. All right. Let's talk about Detroit, because a lot of stuff happened with Detroit. There was a lot of question marks, a lot of expectations, a lot of waiver wire, priority, and a lot of fab money being put out on Detroit this week. And there was a whole lot of head scratching going on, man. Well, let's start with Matthew Stafford. He's got to be, rostered at this point. If I'm like, which I am, if I'm a Jared Goff owner, if I'm a Baker Mayfield owner, I got to start thinking about playing Matthew Stafford. He's just playing too well. They're playing bad. I know he just has that feeling like once you pick him up and play him, boom, he's going to start sucking, right? Like the very next week. But something's going on here in Detroit. They're playing well. They've got weapons. I mean, there's no doubt about that. They want to throw the ball, and Stafford looks great. 342 and 3 touchdowns with a pick. You love that. Let's talk about the running game, though. I was one of those people, there was a ton of us out there that went ahead and grabbed Ty Johnson after Kerryon Johnson got hurt. You were hearing that, maybe they're looking at free agents. Maybe they're looking at making a trade. Maybe they'll bring in a veteran running back. That's fine. That's all understandable. What I didn't hear during the week was that Trey Carson was going to be the number 1 running back on the team. And it's funny, I was watching the game with a friend of mine. Every time we turned around, it was like, Logan Thomas is catching the ball. Marvin Hall catching the ball. Trey Carson running the ball. Paul Perkins running the ball. It's like the Lions had a whole other team that we didn't know about that came out for fantasy. But, Ty Johnson, that TY does not stand for thank you. I do not thank you, sir. I played you in a couple of leagues, and it really definitely cost me the win in one league for sure. It's nothing personal. I get it. I know you're watching the show right now. You're really, really feeling bad about it, but don't feel bad. That's just part of fantasy football. But Ty Johnson, 7 carries for 25 yards, and it took a long time to get him in the game. I felt like most of the first half he didn't even see him. And then he had the ball a few times in his hand in the third quarter, seemed to disappear again a little bit. I don't know. All I know is every time I looked up at that game and Detroit was running the ball, it didn't look like Ty Johnson. I guess he got 7 carries compared to Trey Carson's 12, so not a ridiculously off share of the carries. But, I thought Ty Johnson would be the guy with 15-plus carries this game. I thought he'd be more involved in the passing game. He had 4 targets, so in all fairness, he had a couple of opportunities in the passing game. Only caught 1 ball for 13 yards, but none of that does it for you. If you played him, none of that does it. You were not happy with his line. You got 5 points out of him, and you very, very well may have lost your game by playing Ty Johnson over a myriad of other people that you could have played, throughout the week. Adrian Peterson and so many guys scored 12, 13, points. If you can't hear the frustration in my voice, it's there. But again, you got to get over it. It's fantasy. You make the wrong calls. A lot of people were picking Ty Johnson this week to have a big week. It just didn't happen. I'm not dropping him yet just because I don't see a ton of big name waiver wire guys this week. So I want to see what happens. He's still got the ball a decent amount. I'm not willing to just drop him for another random person. Kerryon Johnson's not coming back anytime soon. Someone's going to be running the ball. Let's see what happens. I'm not playing Ty Johnson next week, so that's not what I'm doing. I'm not playing him. But I don't think I'm dropping him yet. If I went out and spent, a high waiver pick on him or some fab money, I'm not just dropping him right away. So I mean, not that Trey Carson had a big game, exactly. So he had 12 carries, 34 yards, no receptions, no targets. It's not like Trey Carson's a huge part of this, game plan in this offense. So that is what it is. The receiving options in Detroit, some of them had big games, some of them didn't. If you're a Kenny Galladay owner, you were thrilled. First half was pretty slow for him, but 6 receptions, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns, double dip. Huge game for Kenny G. You needed it. 8 targets. That's pretty much where he's been all year, right? Last week was kind of crazy. He had 2 targets. But I said, hey, that's not going to happen. 8 targets is right where he's at. Made the most of them this week, and he just looked great going up and getting the ball, ripping the ball away from defenders, winning those 50-50 balls that you got to win to score those big touchdowns, and he looked great. The big story here was Danny Amendola targeted early and often, 8 targets. Caught all 8 for 95 yards. Have a game, Danny. We thought he could have some value in PPR. It just hasn't really panned out that way on a week-to-week basis, but you see how valuable he is when Matthew Stafford wants to target him. He's there. Those underneath routes, those little slants, those easy passes are there all game long if you want him. So he's just somebody to have on the radar. It's all about your team. I'm not playing him right now. Even based on this game, I'm not playing him. Would I stash him on my roster? Maybe, moving forward. But I think he'll be out there. If you want to leave him out there on the waiver wire and then stream him, I think you'll be able to do that. Marvin Jones, quiet day. If you chase the points, this is what happens. He had 5 targets, 4 receptions, 22 yards. So he really kind of hurt you if you played him this week. But that's what happens. He's a big play guy. He's not going to have, obviously, multiple touchdowns every week. This was a Kenny Galladay week. Danny Amendola was heavily involved. That's just the way it played out. And if you played Marvin Jones, you weren't happy. I played TJ Hawkinson. I don't know what's going on. He got 1 target, caught it for 21 yards. It's just weird that he's just not involved. I mean, he's so big, and you see him out there. I feel like he should get more targets. But at this point, I think you're not playing TJ Hawkinson. I'm going to get rid of him in that league. You're looking at Chris Herndon, you're looking at Darren Fells, you're looking at Jonnu Smith. Look at any of these guys before you're looking at TJ Hawkinson, in my opinion. Doesn't mean he's not going to have any more good games this year. I'm sure he will. But just for trust factor, I'm not playing him this next week, and I'm not thrilled to play him anytime super soon anyway. All right, let's keep it rolling. Let's go to Tennessee. Was this in Tennessee? I don't know. I feel like this was the London game. Was this the London game? Maybe. I don't know. Doesn't say it here. But Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Tennessee Titans. It was an interesting game. Let's see. Jameis Winston, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. You're not really that mad at that. If you play Jameis Winston, you know what the possibilities are. You know that 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions is pretty good, if you're just hoping to play Jameis Winston, right? You're hoping it's not 1 touchdown and, 3 interceptions, right? Or something like that. So, you were pretty happy if you played Jameis Winston. Hopefully you didn't play any of the running backs. He continues to be not only a running back by committee, but just a very mediocre one at that. Ronald Jones, 11 for 35. Peyton Barber, 10 for 20. Neither one of them added a lot on through the air. Ronald Jones did have 4 targets. Only caught 1 of them for 17. Barber had 3 targets, caught 1 for 8. So not much work in there, and not enough going on the ground. So maybe you have Peyton Barber on your bench. Running back is thin out there on the waiver wire, and you can keep him on your bench for these upcoming bye weeks. But hopefully you're not starting any Tampa Bay running backs right now. All right, Mike Evans owners, time to enjoy the upside of that roller coaster you've been riding. You get those weeks where Evans disappears, and then you get these weeks, 11 receptions on 12 targets, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns. Just was in beast mode all game. He's just really big and really good. And I just think it's crazy that how good he looks. Sometimes I'm watching, one of the highlights here. He just looked awesome. I mean, he is huge. He's such a huge target out there. And I'd just like to see more balance between the Godwin and Evans production. The targets weren't that far off. So let's talk about Chris Godwin. 8 targets. Caught 4 of them for 43 yards. So, pedestrian day. You've been getting used to these big games from Chris Godwin. You didn't get it this game. You didn't get the touchdown. You didn't get the yards. But 8 targets, you're still happy. That's all you want to see, especially in a bad week. You just want to see that your guy's continuing to get targets and he's continuing to be a part of the game plan that makes you feel good going forward. With O.J. Howard at, Cameron Brate had a serviceable game. I'm sure a number of people picked up Cameron Brate and played him. He had 6 targets, so you're happy about that. He only caught 3 of them for 32 yards, but 6.2 points out of a bottom end tight end that you were just hoping would score. You're okay with that, and you like the 6 targets. If O.J. Howard continues to be injured, and I quote that because I think he's going to be traded, but if he continues to be injured or he's not on the team anymore, then absolutely Cameron Brate becomes playable. A fringe tight end 1 kind of guy, maybe in that top 15 range. But you can play him and probably get those 5+ targets a game. All right, so Tennessee. I streamed Ryan Tannehill, and that worked out pretty well for me. Got pretty lucky though. A couple of turnovers, gave him a short field and a couple of short touchdowns. But you'll take it any way you can get it. 193 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I'm not saying go out and get Ryan Tannehill. That's not what I'm saying. But there's a lot of teams on bye coming up, and depending on the matchups, I think Tannehill's as good of a streaming option as many. I think he's right up there with, Derek Carr and Gardner Minshew. And I have him above guys like Andy Dalton and, Case Keenum / Dwayne Haskins, Joe Flacco, whoever's going to be his replacement. So I'm all right with grabbing Tannehill and playing him if you're desperate and you're one of these teams on a bye coming up and the matchup's good. You play him. He's just a good quarterback that can take care of the ball. He's going to get better every week here with this offense. So, again, playable. Not saying go out and grab him, but playable. Derrick Henry, decent game, 16 for 75. Only had 1 reception, so you weren't, very happy with your Derrick Henry this week. He didn't kill you, but he did what he did. He got 16 carries, which is a low week for him. And that game was just kind of not a slow game. It actually moved very fast. And that's what I mean. There weren't that many plays run, weren't that many, that many possessions for Tennessee that moved a lot. So, is what it is. All right, so receivers in Tennessee, there wasn't a lot of volume here. A lot of guys, 5, 6 targets. Adam Humphries has 6 targets. Corey Davis had 6 targets. A.J. Brown had 3. Tajay Sharp had 3. Let's see, Anthony Fursker had 5 targets. Anthony Fursker, that's a name. And again, I told you, play Jonnu Smith. I tried to tell you. So, Ryan Tannehill, a lot of these quarterbacks love throwing to the tight end. Especially when they're new in the offense, they're trying to settle in, and you want those safe routes. So, we look at the tight ends here. You had Jonnu Smith, 6 receptions on 7 targets, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Big game, almost 20 points. And Anthony Fursker had 5 targets, 3 receptions, 43 yards. The 2 yardage leaders for this team were both of the tight ends by far. Yes, you had wide receiver touchdowns. Tajay Sharp got the short touchdown. A.J. Brown had a touchdown. So if you played Brown, that saved your day, but you're not happy with the 3 targets. Long story short, if I'm playing Tennessee Titans, receivers right now, it's just Jonnu Smith. Until I see a little bit more, maybe Corey Davis. He did have 6 targets. He did nothing with them this week, but he'll have some good games with Tannehill. But right now, as long as Delanie Walker is out, I think you really, really want to play Jonnu Smith. And I do think Delanie Walker is a good option when he comes back playing with Tannehill. So I'd be looking forward to playing him also. Listen, Tannehill was a decent part of my win this week. I was very happy that he played the way he did. And I got what I needed to get out of him. All right. Let's move to our last game of today. We're going to split this into 2 parts. So tomorrow we're going to review the second half of the games on that slate. But we're going to finish up today in Indianapolis. And this was, it's kind of an ugly game to finish up on. If you watch this game, first of all, sorry. But if you watched a lot of it, it was just kind of, a prodding and slow game. I'd like to say it was a defensive struggle. But I think it was more of an offensive struggle. Honestly, teams were having trouble moving the ball, getting something going, and just sustaining drive seemed to be hard. Joe Flacco looks like he's going to be out. Again, no offense, Joe Flacco. I don't think many people played you or were going to play you. So if you're out, really the big question here is what does that do to affect the receivers and the running backs? I think Philip Lindsay, Royce Freeman, you have to just have the right expectation. Neither one is going to become a true running back one while the other is there. It just cannot happen. RB1 cannot exist in this offense while they're both playing well and getting this share. So you had Philip Lindsay with 14 carries, 59 yards. He also had 5 targets, 5 receptions, which was pretty big for him. You've been seeing Freeman get more of the targets. So 5 for 5 with 17 yards. Kind of saved his game. You got those extra 6 points, so he got 12, whatever he got, 12 and a half points maybe on the week. And it was all about the receptions for him. Royce Freeman, 12 carries, 40 yards, but he got the touchdown. Only added 1 reception for 5 yards, so nothing going there, but the touchdown made his game viable. Again, they scored almost the same amount of points here. And you were, I guess what I'm trying to say is if you drafted Philip Lindsay, then you're really not happy with 12 points because of where you drafted him, where you had to get him. If you picked up Royce Freeman on waiver wires or drafted him at the very end of a draft, then you're happy with how he's performing because he's a guy you can play if you need to, and he's performing well. So that's just how it turned out. Lindsay is not returning his draft capital, and Royce Freeman definitely is. So that's the story of that. The receiving options didn't do much for Denver. Cortland Sutton, first big game as the number 1. Emmanuel Sanders is gone. He had 6 targets, caught 3 of them for 72 yards. So it wasn't a bad game. It just wasn't what you were maybe hoping for as a kind of a coming out game as the big number 1. Noah Fant, ton of targets. Big story here. And the guy continues to be targeted. He continues to be on the field a lot, but just not doing a lot with it. 5 receptions, 26 yards on those 8 targets. So there's always 2 ways to look at it. You love seeing a guy with 8 targets. Any tight end with 8 targets makes you feel like, hey, in today's tight end landscape, that's somebody I want. 5 receptions. You're not usually going to get 5 receptions for 26 yards. Typically, you'll get a little bit more out of that. And Noah Fant has to be somebody you're looking at. I'm sorry, I don't love it. Well, actually, I take that back. If Joe Flacco was going to be in, I'd say you want to look at Fant, but now it looks like Flacco might be out for a while. And I don't know what you do. So with Flacco out, I think you got to keep playing Cortland Sutton because he's the number 1. I think you're going to play the running backs the same way you have been. But that's it. I'm not playing anybody else on that team until I see who this new quarterback is and how he looks under center. So there you go. All right, Indianapolis, they got the win, so they're happy, right? They're 5-2. They're feeling good about getting the win. Got that last field goal there, but they are not feeling great about just the way they played in this game. They did not look good. Brissett did not look sharp. 15 of 25 for 202 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So he took care of the ball. He did add 34 yards on the ground. So if you streamed him, again, he didn't kill you. And I tried to say that was the story of this week. A lot of guys didn't kill you. But if you played against some of these monsters, then it was tough sledding. So if you streamed Jacoby Brissett, you weren't that happy this week, but you got just enough points where maybe it didn't hurt you. Marlon Mack, 19 carries, 76 yards, did get a touchdown on the ground. That touchdown did it for you. That gave you the points that you needed. He only added 1 reception, only got targeted 1 time. I want to see the targets. Nyheim Hines had 3 targets. Granted, they didn't throw the ball a lot. 25 attempts on the day. Not that many to go around, I understand. But I do want to see Marlon Mack with the ball in his hands. Again, I'm a get the ball in the hands of your playmakers type of guy, and that's what I want to see. I didn't see that here. So there you go. You're continuing to play Marlon Mack because he's playing great. But let's get involved more in the passing game. All right, your receivers. So, T.Y. Hilton, he helped me because I played against him. I needed him to be kind of quiet this week, and he was. But T.Y. Hilton owners were definitely frustrated this week. I don't think he did anything for the first half maybe, and then wound up with 2 receptions, 54 yards. So he had 1 long catch, 35-yard play, but 6 targets. Just didn't happen for him. It wasn't a game where he was able to get away from Chris Harris for long enough to make some big plays. So You're still playing T.Y. Hilton going forward. No worries. He's going to be fine. He's going to score. It's all good. Play T.Y. Hilton. That's the only receiver, that I'd be playing, for Indianapolis right now moving forward. I really don't want a part of Chester Rogers or Zach Pascal. You just don't know. It's just too much unknown with those players. There's no reason to play those guys. Tight ends, it continues to be a tight end by committee, honestly. Jack Doyle had a decent game. 4 receptions on 5 targets, 61 yards. Ebron had 4 targets, so 1 less target. 3 receptions, 26 yards. He didn't have, the couple of big plays downfield that Jack Doyle had, but, it continues to be a tight end by committee, and whoever you play, you have to know that it might be the other guy's week that time, right? Eric Ebron seems to be more of the red zone target in most weeks, so he might have more touchdowns. Maybe Jack Doyle winds up with more receptions and yards on the season. Either way, I'm just not a big fan of playing either one of these guys. I know tight end is tough, and maybe you feel like you have to. But really, I'd rather play a tight end where, he is the tight end. And for good or bad, he has a chance at, big weeks. I know that may sound, counterintuitive, and it might not work out. Like TJ Hawkinson is obviously the tight end for Detroit, but he's not doing anything, and either one of these guys would have given you more points. But that's just how it goes sometimes. I just don't love playing Indianapolis tight ends. I don't have them anywhere in my leagues, and I'm not trying to get them. They're on the waiver wires, and I'm okay leaving them there. I'm looking at some other options. We're going to have some other options to talk about tomorrow because there were some tight ends that hadn't shown up in a while that all of a sudden did, that weren't on this half of the games, but we're going to talk about them on the back half. So we'll give you some names to look out for moving into Week 9. That is going to do it for us today. So that's the first half of our Week 8 in review show. We've got 8 more games to go over tomorrow, so make sure you watch that to hear how your players played and what we're expecting from them going forward. Later on in the week, we will be getting our preview shows done for Week 9. Lots going on in Week 9. Big names on bye in Week 9. You're going to need some replacements. You're going to need some help deciding who to play and who to sit. And that's what I'm here for. So hopefully we're helping you out. Hopefully you're having a little fun listening to the show, watching the show. We're going to be doing this, a lot. This year, we're just getting started, right? This is a little baby. It's a little infant, this show. It's a little baby, and it's going to be growing, and it'll grow and grow. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to be adding a lot of fun stuff, getting some guest hosts, some co-hosts in, and then, just ramping up production value over time, right? I'm still learning how to do this, but I'm just having a lot of fun talking fantasy football and trying to get ready for the week. So let's help you, let's help me, let's get some W's, and let's kick some ass, all right? Have a great day. This has been the GOAT Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Neander. Have a great day. We'll see you soon. All right.